Good morning. Morning, folks. How are we today? Morning, Ruth. Morning, Hugh. Morning, Last Braveheart. Morning, John. Morning, Francis. Morning, Doug. Morning, Brian. Melanie. Charlotte. Callum. Morning, Baby Bump. Morning, Reverend of Wrestling, Jim Campbell. I'm sure the driving god's about to pop in and all. Morning, Aaron. Hi, John and Alan. Morning, Avril. Mark, Shazza. Numbers are starting to climb nicely. Thank you. Still any driving god yet? Maybe I've missed them. Good. Yeah, maybe you must be busy this morning driving. Anyway, as I say, numbers are climbing nicely. Morning, Lynn. Morning, Sandra. Morning, BJ. Morning, Alex. The Lefty Boater. Good morning. Right, that's enough of you on board, so let's get this broadcast underway. It's in the truck. Davey at the truck, not home in his office in Salisbury, North Lanarkshire, where it is clear out. Lovely sunny morning, -1 degrees. And it'll culminate in a really cold night tonight, folks, so wrap up warm. Right, okay, this is a news review for the 16th of the 1st, 2023 from the colony of Scotland. Alright, Monday started with two main themes in the rags: Starmer's gender law worry and 5-year wait for a scan. On Starmer and the GRR bill, he, like Sunak and others, don't seem to understand or care for our traditions and law. It's why we changed the law on voting age in Scotland to 16. Okay. Here in Scotland, we've always accepted that our young people become adult at 16. It's been a tradition for a long time now. They can get married at 16. They can get a job at 16 and pay taxes at 16. They can join the armed forces at 16. They contribute greatly to our society at 16. So, that's our traditions. Now, Starmer thinks that changing gender or being adult enough to decide to change your gender at 16, just too young. But old enough to contribute to society in any other way. Well, here in Scotland, we're a wee bit more democratic than that, and we believe in our young people. And that's why we let them vote at 16. No taxation without representation. To say we're a wee bit more democratic than that here. But there's more to that than this. Starmer was the first warning shot we had about something that was going to happen yesterday. And it's been rumbling on for about a week or so. But we'll get a wee bit more of that as we get into the report. Alright, now as to a 5-year wait for a scan on the NHS. Never heard so much pissing all my life. But that is another attack on our parliament, on our parliamentarians, and on our devolved powers. Now, apparently, some geezer in the Grampian region waited 5 years for a CT scan. I'd like to see why. I really would. I can understand 2 year yet. But 5 year, I find that bloody hard to believe. And if it did take 5 years for me to get a scan, there must have been some contributing factors involving that person themselves. That's for sure. But as I say, it's all part of the greater propaganda thing about undermining our public services, especially the NHS. We have to be convinced that our government is so poor at running our services that they're going to fail devolution. And they're going to start by taking the NHS back as a devolved power. But that's got nothing to do with how well it's been run or how poorly it's been run. That's got to do with the fact that they want to package it up and privatise it. Simple as that. Okay, right, moving on Monday, and the Herald runs a report saying ministers betraying poor on social rents. And it says that social rents to rise by 11%. The Herald says local authorities set to increase rents in the social rented sector by 11.1%. Now, apparently that's the Scottish Government's fault because the rent freeze over the winter is coming to an end. And the no evictions during the winter is coming to an end. Well, you know, it's not sustainable because landlords are going to be compensated. One way or another. Now, the Scottish Government and ministers don't set social rents. And I was looking at it this morning. North Lanarkshire hasn't published any figures on how much they're going to increase rents by in the social sector. South Lanarkshire Council put it out to consultation. I dare say there's other things going on around the country. But it's the Scottish Government's fault that rents are due to rise by 11%. No, it's not. There's the upkeep of social housing. And then, of course, when you build more social housing, there's a mortgage on it. The mortgages and upkeep are affected by interest rates and inflation. Now, inflation affects social housing because increased costs for materials for the upkeep, increased costs for the maintenance, and the men that produce, men and women that do the maintenance. And then, of course, if you build new properties and the bank's hiking interest rates, well, the cost of the mortgage of the new properties you've built to put into the social rented sector also rises. So rents have got to go up accordingly. But it's not the Scottish Government's fault. They don't set the rents. They could theoretically cap it, but then you could put councils into an even worse position than what they're in now. What's interesting about all this is, do you know that these councils actually have more borrowing power than the Scottish Parliament? That's mental, isn't it? They answer to the Scottish Government through COSLA, and yet they can raise more money than the Scottish Government. They can borrow with the Scottish Government, can't they? Absolutely nuts. So, the Herald runs a pish story saying it's the SNP and the Green Government's fault that rents are about to rise in the social rented sector. It's no. Inflation and interest is doing that. Inflation means that costs right across the board go up. Interest rates mean that new properties built, the mortgages will then go up. Simple as that. So just another pish story to lay the blame of something which has got nothing to do with the Scottish Government at the Scottish Government's door. Right, moving on Monday, and another slap in the face to the Scottish Government and people who elected them democratically. Despite the Scottish people's will to build a sustainable future and to transition away from oil and gas, our imperial masters are granting drilling licences for the Scottish continental shelf at a rapid rate of knots. In the latest round, there are more than 100 applications for new drilling licences. All right, so much for the oil's running out. Lying Tory government, lying British state. Oh, your oil's running out, but we're granting licences to drill for merit at a rapid rate of knots. I heard that. Good day, Stevie. That's interesting. When the Scottish Government gave the council extra money to prevent rent and council tax rises during the pandemic, Orkney Council still put the rents up today. I wonder who runs the Orkney Council. Right, moving on. Monday, and the Office for National Statistics published the latest employment figures in Scotland. In the last quarter, according to the National Office for National Statistics, 76.1% of 16 to 64-year-olds in Scotland were gainfully employed. Unemployment is at 3.3%. That covers 79.4% of the working age population. The rest of the population are unable to work for various reasons, being retired, being unfit for work, or being wealthy enough just no one back to work. A lot of that happened during the pandemic. People just went, bugger it. I'm not going back to work, I can manage. So, there you go. Unemployment figures for gainfully employed figures in the rest of the UK are at 75.6%. So once again, the Scottish economy is outstripping the rest of the UK. So much for too weak, too poor, and too stupid. So we'll get a wee bit of that as we go on. Right, UNS also tells us that rates of pay is also increasing at a higher rate than normal, with the average income rising by 6.4%, still way short of keeping up with inflation. The Office for National Statistics says when adjusted for inflation, average earnings are down 2.6%, and it's the biggest drop in wages and living standards for 40 years. Wow. Stupid as a stupid does. Westminster wrecks the economy. Pulls us out of our biggest market. Scotland's still outperforming the rest of the UK, but we will be dragged down to that level. Highest employment figures. That won't last as we get into contraction, folks. In fact, I don't believe it. I think they must be massaging the figures. But if the figures at this point in time are correct, we'll see where they stand in the second and third quarter of this year. Okay, moving on Monday, and the First Minister gives a briefing on the so-called disaster in the NHS. The First Minister says, yep, things are tough right now. The NHS is near capacity, but there are signs that the pressure is easing. Well, let's hope this latest call spell doesn't reverse that, For once, the press didn't want to speak about our National Health Service. They're quite happy to scream more crap at run with NHS the rest of the time, but at yesterday's briefing came the second clue that something was about to happen, which was going to be the unionists putting their minority boot on our neck. That's minority booty in Scotland, on our necks. As the press wanted to talk about at Nicola's briefing yesterday was the Gender Recognition Act. Gender Recognition Reform Bill. Which is interesting, because they're normally quite happy to slag off our NHS. And that was the second clue that our imperial masters were about to do something that wasn't going to please us. Okay. But, yesterday wasn't the first time they've undermined devolution, but it was the first full frontal attack. We'll get a wee bit more of that as we go further into the report. All right, moving on Monday, and more fairy stories. And according to the Pravda, CalMac is struggling to maintain its ageing fleet because of budgetary pressures on the maintenance budget. It reports that the maintenance budget is not enough. There's a Davy says here, all the budgets have been blown by inflation, and that would include CalMac's maintenance budget for its ageing fleet. And there's a reason there's an ageing fleet, because successive governments before devolution and after devolution have failed to invest in the fleet. Simple as that. Since devolution, it's because of budgetary constraints. Prior to devolution, there was no reason why the Scotland office couldn't petition Westminster and got the money to update the fleet. There you go. But inflationary pressures will do that to budgets right now. Right, moving on Monday. And here in Scotland, the teacher strikes rolls on with 16 days of action across the sector. On Monday, it was Glasgow and East Lothian. Teachers who were out on strike. Today, Tuesday, it'll be Perth and Kinross and North Ayrshire. You get the idea. It's actually quite considerate. The teachers consider that industrial action at this point in time. By having rolling strikes in different areas, it means the economy is not coming to a standstill and there isn't more damage being done to the economy. You imagine if they all went on strike at the one time, Mom and Pa's not going to work. Or one of them at least is not going to work. Somebody's got to look after the kids. You can't get a babysitter, you can't get a childminder, you can't get grandparents, then a large swathe of the economy shuts down. So actually, when it comes to industrial action and the needs of the people, we should be very proud of the way our teachers are behaving and the way our public sector in general is behaving when it comes to these strikes. So it's a big pat on the back for the teachers, the nurses who have postponed action to try and find a resolution, the train drivers, the police who all realised there was only so much in the pot and we better settle, otherwise we could see colleagues losing jobs. The way the Scottish public sector have behaved actually has been absolutely outstanding. Kudos to them. Support the strikers. We know the Scottish Government want to give them what they want. We also know they can't give them what they want because of the devolution settlement and the way Scotland is funded. No magic money tree in Scotland. That's another reason for independence. But as I say, kudos to those who are in the public sector who are striking here in Scotland. They are behaving impeccably. Right, okay, moving on Monday, and let's get to the main event, shall we? Monday evening, and the Governor-General of the colony tells us and the press that our Imperial Masters intend to put us in our place again. And that'll be for the third time in the term of this Parliament. But this time will be the first full frontal attack. The first two times they went to court to block the legislation. And it looks like we're going to court again. First time was when they decided that we couldn't enshrine the rights of our children into our legal system, into our law. They're not supposed to tamper with our law. The second time was when they decided to go to the Supreme Court to stop the devolution, the referendum bill, and to settle whether Scotland is allowed to ask itself a question and whether Scotland is a colony or a country. This time, because of the previous two times, they've been emboldened enough to use something called Section 35 of the Scotland Act. And that's where the notion of power devolved is power retained comes from. Think about that. The Scotland Act actually stole a lot of our powers and tied us up in knots. Section 35 allows them to veto any laws that they want, that the Scottish Parliament want to make, and come up with spurious reasons for doing it. The GRR is one of the most scrutinised pieces of legislation that's ever went through the Scottish Parliament, actually, and in Scotland. It went through the courts umpteen times to make sure it doesn't interfere with the Equalities Act. But our Imperial Masters Governor-General in Scotland tells us it would impinge on their rights to change our equalities. And that's going to be highly important going forward as they scrap our workers' rights and our human rights and all that. Remember, the ERG and Brexit's ultimate goal is to deregulate. Scotland's devolved parliament is a barrier to that. Wales's devolved parliament is a barrier to that. And they've only got 18 months left in government to put it through. But this was a shut-up job, get back in your place shot. They've turned the Gender Act into Gender Recognition Act or Reform Bill into a political football. They say it will impinge on equalities, will it? They didn't say that when we had different rules on homosexuality for them. Oh, but of course, we weren't devolved then, were we? So this is a full frontal attack on Scotland, using the Scotland Act that they created. We voted for Home Rule. They decided what it was going to look like. And in that particular act, they tied their horns. And they thought it was going to do away with the thirst for independence when devolution came around. We were always going to be in a collision course. And we're getting there now. After 2014, and then after 2016, the Brexit vote, which drew more people to the cause of independence because we want to remain in Europe. We want to keep our biggest markets open. We are internationalists, and no. Isolationists. They know if there's another vote now, they're going to lose. And they're tying themselves in knots to try and convince us that devolution was a disaster. All the great advances were made under the devolved Parliament was a disaster. And that they should take control again. Too stupid. On stilts. But this is a full frontal attack on democracy and on the devolved settlement and on the will of the Scottish people. Ignore our traditions, ignore our culture, suppress our law. That's exactly what's going on here. We are going back to the 1700s, to the days when the band played and the band the Gaelic. Just a modern day version of it. They are telling us who's boss, and they're showing us who's boss. Jamie Green, MSP, Tory party, he seemed to understand it. He seemed to understand that what they were doing was an attack on devolution. And he told them, he warned them, don't do this. Devolution is popular in Scotland. The Scottish Parliament's got an 86% approval rating. And 61% of the Scottish people in the last social attitude study says that Holyrood should make audit decisions in Scotland. 61%, that's a whopping majority. Even the Tories know that what they're about to do is a mistake. And all this talk we've been having now about an election for another mandate, or election as a plebiscite, or election as another mandate, and then a plebiscite in 2026. Might well be that the Scottish Government's supposed to go faster. Might well be. But as I say, this is a full-on attack on our democracy, on our devolved settlement, and it won't sit well with the people. It won't sit well with the people. Jamie Green, Tory MSP is right. This will drive people to our way of thinking. And democracy will win out. It will. The will of the people must stand. They thought that devolution was going to put an end to the people's will for independence. All it did was embolden us, give us powers, and we used them more effectively than they did down that road. We earned ourselves better. As we George Folks, the arts unionist, said on the BBC, they're making things better. Public services manifestly better here in Scotland what they are in England and Wales. Is that a bad thing? No, but they're doing it deliberately. We've done great things under devolution. The British government and the English people were looking up here with jealousy. And that can't be. That can't be done. The Scottish Parliament can't outshine the English Parliament. No, that can't be allowed in their imperial masters' minds. So we've got a full-on attack on our democracy. Nico De Smit asked what happened to the October 2023 referendum. Nico De Smit, the UK government took the Scottish government to court and banned them from having one. That was just a couple of months ago. Apparently we're not allowed to ask ourselves a question without our imperial masters' permission. And that's what makes Scotland an oppressed people and a colony And now that they've made that clear to us, they're putting their boot in our necks. Ah, well, looks like we're off to court again. No doubt the Supreme Court will rule in favour of our imperial masters again, because they've already made it clear that we're a colony. Right, folks, that's what I've got for you this morning. Let's have a quick look and see what the rags have got to say, shall we? Hope you found that interesting. Right, Scotland papers see you in court as UK bids to block Scottish gender law. UK blocks Scottish gender law. First Minister Brandon Jack's move a full frontal attack on Holyrood, and it was. We'll see you in court as they're answered. Same story. The Times has block on gender reform bill attack on democracy. It would appear that the Times agrees with Miss Sturgeon here. But I always say that appears. Once you get into the actual headline, it's no. Now, the other thing about this is the UK government are trying to make this look as if it's normal and as if it's procedural. It's no. The Scotsman has UK blocks gender reform law and first for devolution. It's not the first time they've been pinched on devolved powers. And the Daily Telegraph has Sunak blocks SNP gender law as it would harm equality. Not with it. It's been scrutinised extremely in our courts and in our parliament. The National has nuclear option. UK will block Scots bill. And there's an advert there for one of the alternative independent parties. The Scottish Daily Express has Scots gender reform bill is blocked by UK. The Scottish Daily Mail has Rousseau blocks Sturgeon's gender bill. It's no Sturgeon's gender bill. It was a cross-party bill that passed through the Scottish Parliament, and it was a cross-party vote that brought it in. In fact, even 3 of the Tories in the Scottish Parliament voted way. The rest, Labour, Lib Dem, Greens, SNP, and the Tories, even though it was only 3 of them, voted for the gender recognition reform bill. The Herald has Sturgeon condemns UK move to block gender reform law. Listen, that's got nothing to do with gender reform. They don't give a sugar about gender reform. What they care about is making sure we know our place. The Herald has Sturgeon condemns UK move to block gender reform law. The Eye has Sunak sparks constitutional battle with Sturgeon over gender law. Now, it's a star goat for us today. We've got a star today. The Star has world's most feared mafia boss is caught after 30 years on the run. Bada bing. There you go. The Star decides to keep at it and talk about the mafia. There you go. Right, that's what I've got for you today, folks. I hope you found it interesting. I hope you found it informative. And I hope you found the delivery entertaining. All right. Now, remember, the Freedom Chain are trying to get 70,000 people to make a chain right around Scotland, right across the central belt of Scotland, from Glasgow to Edinburgh. You can jump on a Freedom Chain or a Chain of Freedom and sign up via the website if you want to participate. It's looking like more and more like public protest, peaceful public protest and things like that are going to be needed. People chains have been used in other places to highlight the plight of the democratic will of people before. So give that some support, all right? Now also support the independent media, support Broadcasting Scotland, support Independence Live, Indie Live Radio, Caledon Media, Tours Radio, the iScot magazine, and a national newspaper, support independent bloggers and bloggers. And if I've got a crowdfunder going and you can afford to throw a check on the pot, then please do. You know the story with me, I'm not interested in your money. All right, now also, pressure's supposed to be easing in our NHS, folks, but we're still in winter. It could go either way. All right. So remember the last couple of bits of guidance. If you're feeling under the weather or if you're in an enclosed public space, mask up. Clean your hands and surfaces regularly. That's the first one of this week out in the road. We'll be back tomorrow to do it all again. You guys look after yourself. I hope you enjoyed it. Bye for now.